So this video is going to be about everything I did after my first windmill on 10 feet, leading up to my first Eastbay on 10 feet. Now that windmill was at the end of April, so heading into May, what I was trying to do was basically just have fun with dunking again. I have a whole video about getting from my first dunk to my first windmill, but to summarize it, I got so obsessed with windmilling that it was not a positive thing anymore. So in this first week of May, I was trying to be creative with my dunking and movement in general. For reference, around this time I was Eastbaying on about 9.2, and we'll get back to the Eastbay, but at this point what I was doing was basically just not focusing on it. I had a trip to Italy, took a lot of time to reflect on my training, and I did vacation stuff too, but yeah, I did a lot of dunking. Those clips are from Rome and then went to a couple other cities too. I ended up working on a lot of spinning dunks, so there's a reverse and also a first 360. Now, after I wrapped that up, I set my sights on dunk camp in late June and started with some organized training. One of the things I wanted to do at dunk camp was the 9-foot contest, so I started practicing dunks for that. I actually didn't end up doing a lot of these, and you'll see why in the contest, but it was still good general development. I think maybe I'll try and hit some of these on 10 feet going forward. But anyways, flew out to Utah, got ready for the first day, and I tested a 40-inch approach vertical, which was one of my biggest goals. I also got to watch my favorite dunker jump, did some high rims, met a ton of people, and then it was time for the contest. I ended up playing it safe in the first round, which was a good decision because I got to the second round. In the second round, I tried to pull out the reverse 360 windmill, which I hit in the warm-ups, but it's a really hard dunk to bounce on, and I couldn't make it happen. So I capped it off with the windmill elbow, learned a couple more things, watched the dunk show, and headed home. Now, in July, I got invited to a 10-foot contest in Vancouver, so the plan switched up a bit. I was practicing my double up on 10 pretty consistently. That's my first jump over a real person on 9.2, and I even went to the court a week before to check it out. I live on Vancouver Island, by the way, so it's like a 90-minute ferry ride. In terms of the other dunks I was working on, you can see how to transfer there, and I was working on getting consistent with my windmill, which I was doing a pretty good job at. Showed up to a very big crowd, but I was in a pretty good headspace, so warmed up really, really well. Got to the dunks, and I missed my windmill 3 times. And that's just the way it is. There's nothing I could have done with the information I had to prepare better. And yeah, got to move on. Good experience though, and I was lucky enough to have some people to pull me up. Moving on to August, this training block was crazy. I was finally able to start working on my strength again. Got some deficit deadlifts there, and I also was working on rebuilding my squat. I wanted it to be deeper and more bouncy, and I accomplished both of those things. You'll see the PR at the end of the block. I also wanted to learn how to backflip for the backflip dunk, so I started working on that a little bit. And I was picking it up slowly, but surely. And I also wanted to learn how to 360 kamikaze. After I deloaded, it had been a while since I tested Eastbay, so I went and hit 9.6. It wasn't a big goal at the time, but after that happened, I kind of felt ready to commit to it again as a big dunk goal without getting too attached to it. And you can see I have tons of other PRs, this block, deadlift, and I'd also been eyeing this gap off the top of my house to the garage. Also happened to hit the 360 kamikaze for the first time there. And I also wanted to do a double up under both. I hit that, and I was making some really solid progress on the backflip. And then going forward, I kept making good Eastbay progress. I was really excited because I came out very slow this session. And I PR'd my deadlift. I feel like I could have done more, but I went straight up to 500 after this and couldn't hit it. I also hit a 20-pound PR on squat, probably because I undershot the one last month. And I also zerkered 405. So yeah, safe to say I have all of my strength back at this point. In October, I narrowed in on the Eastbay even more. I was trying to hit 9.9 mid-block because I thought I was really close, which I was, but didn't hit it. For my training, I cycled in some injury reduction work simply because I hadn't done it in a while. Key point here about how I was organizing my training, I was doing 2-days, so I would jump and lift on the same day, which freed up extra days for me to basically completely rest with a little bit of jump volume and some light mobility work. You can see I'm just maintaining the strength minimums with this lift here. And then I'm also still working on the hip flexors with the same exercise from the last block. And even though I was focusing on the Eastbay quite a bit, I was still doing a ton of different dunks to assist with my general development as a dunker and not get carried away with it like I did with the windmill. You can see I have my first double up on 10 over a person, and then I Eastbayed 9.9 and 9.10 coming off of that block. If you've noticed the trend here, I usually make 2 inches of progress a month. So heading into November, I was kind of ready to hit on my end game. Got some low back work there for when my plant touches down, and I sped up the hip flex work this month. I also cycled in drop cleans and sprints. Like I said, I'd been stacking basically high-low quadrant style workouts for the last couple of blocks, So on this block, I did workouts individually, so it would just be the strength or just be jumping, mainly just for the purpose of switching it up. I also can apply a little bit more intent into one of the sessions if that's all I'm focusing on. But yeah, just for variability, basically. Over the last 3 months or so there, I also made a point of making a habit to dunk every single day, just for 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And a big part of that was standing dunk technique work with a heavy ball. Another habit I formed was writing a reflection after training sessions. I really struggle with feeling like I haven't done enough work once I deload. So when you deload, you can look through all of that writing and just reflect on the process and see how much work you've done. And that helped me out. Another thing I got a lot better at was maturity when cutting training sessions, individual lifts, and blocks. It's just knowing when to step away from a big lift when, something just doesn't quite feel right. It's knowing when to cut a session when it's simply not fun anymore. And it's knowing when to cut a block when the outputs are trash. But that's hard to balance with a work ethic. One thing that a friend of mine says that I really like, he says, don't be soft, but don't be stupid. That's Sam Likes Biomechanics on Instagram. Anyways, as you can see, I was starting to go for 10-foot attempts here. I was really flat in one of these sessions, so I ended up doing another test session, and then I did a third test session after a deload, which is very excessive. This is kind of when I noticed I was getting a little too obsessed with it, and I actually ended up splitting my finger open on the rim, and bleeding all over my shirt. So, I was not ecstatic after that. And training just kept getting harder because it was getting very cold, freezing temperatures, snowing, raining, no sunlight. But yeah, obviously it didn't stop me. And I don't know if it was the season or whatever, but around this time, I was totally questioning why I'm training, just having all these thoughts. And kind of the conclusion I landed on is applying a lot of effort to any process that's fairly nuanced is probably not going to be a waste of time. Another thing that I love about human performance, and I've been making a point of doing this year, is hopping on calls with people as often as possible. Anyone who wants to talk shop, it's one of my favorite things to do. Everyone knows who's probably watching this video. If I had a call with you, thank you. And despite the accomplishments you see in these videos, there's a whole lot of failing that goes into it as well. Of course, a whole lot of falling down, a whole lot of not lifting stuff. And also, to put this in perspective, this was me 3 years ago. So that's the end of the video. What I noticed while making this is how much of the timeline is comprised of the Eastbay versus everything else. There's probably a point there to be made about journey over destination, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day. I gotta stop.